Greetings all. This is Dr. Xeturah Woodley. Welcome to an introduction to cultural studies. Each week, well, most weeks, maybe not all weeks, I'll be including a mini lecture for key concepts inside the learning module. So this first week, I'd like to focus on just introducing you to what cultural studies is and giving you a little background, a little information about the different components of culture. So our focus all this week will be around culture. So let's go ahead and get started. First, what is cultural studies? Well, cultural studies, the key thing I want you to remember is that it's an interdisciplinary field. In other words, it brings together different fields of study, different kinds of concepts from each field. I am a sociology instructor here at CNM, sociology and psychology. So most of the terminology that we'll be using this semester will be pulled from fields like sociology, psychology, and women's studies. But cultural studies also incorporates um, key terms, phrases, and concepts from anthropology, ethnic and racial studies, history, humanities, political science. So the key thing to remember is we don't pull from just one field when we're talking about cultural studies. Although, again, for this semester, because I am centered in sociology, psychology, and women's studies, a lot of the terms that will be used will pull from those fields. So what is culture? Culture is about ideas and material objects that are passed on from one generation to the next in a society. The passing of those materials provide guidelines for actions and interactions. So, in other words, culture is a concept, it's a socially constructed concept, and it incorporates all kinds of aspects of who we are in life. It can include the education we receive, knowledge we receive about who to be and how to be in society. It includes beliefs, values, um, things that we call norms in sociology, the rules and laws that govern us. It's about language, customs, symbols, and material. So culture is incorporating, when I use the term culture this semester, it really is inclusive of all of the different areas you see listed on the slide. So let me talk a little bit about the principles of culture. There's a couple of things that we believe as sociologists, those things that we believe as ethnic studies professors. We believe that everyone shares a culture with others. So culture is a shared aspect of being that gets shared from person to person. Culture evolves and adapts over time. In other words, it changes over time. The creation of culture is an ongoing thing, and it's a cumulative process. And the transmission of culture separates us from other animals. The fact that we can create and transmit our cultural norms from generation to generation. So, what are some of the components of culture? Well, when we talk about culture, we talk about it both material culture and then non material culture. So, material culture are those objects that we can see and touch. It's what archaeologists and anthropologists call material artifacts. So, it's the artifacts of the culture that have some tangibility to them. Non material culture, those aspects of culture that are invisible and intangible aspects, like the values that we have, the beliefs that we have, those norms and rules that we share with one another, and the rules that we follow. The language then becomes a key component of the way in which the way in which culture is transmitted. Language becomes a huge part of that. So I'm going to delve just quickly into some of the components of culture. One of the things you'll see us talking about this semester, you'll hear this semester in the course, is about the non-material culture, the non-material aspect of culture called values. So what do I mean by values? Well, as the definition shows here, values are shared judgments about what is desirable or undesirable. Values are those things that we call good and bad, that we see as right and wrong. Um, Now, it's expressed, values are a foundational and fundamental part of what human culture is all about. Because people have different values, there's conflicts that can arise between individuals and that can arise between systems. We'll be looking at all of those kinds of things during the course of the semester, especially when we're looking at components of race, gender, class, sexual orientation, ethnicity. All of those things we can see both cooperation and conflict that happens. Most are centered in the values that people have and share. So, another component of culture is beliefs. Beliefs, again, another example of a non material part of our culture. Beliefs are ideals that we hold about life, how society works, and where we fit into it. Now, most of our beliefs come from some tradition, whether that be a religious tradition or a spiritual tradition. It comes from our experiences, lessons we've learned from our parents. So there are all kinds of ways that we develop our beliefs within a culture, but beliefs play a very key role in establishment of our norms, establishment of our values. Our values actually contribute to what our belief systems become. So we'll be sharing a lot about beliefs during the course of the semester as well, some examples of that. So another component of culture that you'll find out about in this semester is norming, what we call norms. Norms are those rules of behavior shared by members of society, but they're rooted in our value system. Norms can be folkways, they can be mores, what we have on the slide is taboos. Mores are observed by most, and they have great moral significance for people. Those things that become abnormal or are seen as abnormal or deviant in society become taboos, and those are based off of what is seen as a more. Laws, both formal laws, informal laws. So, norms then are the rules of behavior that society says are acceptable or unacceptable, but they're usually agreed upon rules of normalization or normativity. So, what I said in the beginning of this slideshow was that language then becomes part of the way we transmit and learn our values. It's how we learn our beliefs. It's how people become socialized in society, um, how they learn about what's normative behavior versus abnormal behavior. And so language then is used as a symbol to convey meaning, objects, and ideas. It is a basic foundation of the culture, and it takes a couple of forms. It takes spoken form, written form, and even nonverbal form. So, spoken language is sounds that symbolize objects and ideas. Written language is actual images that symbolize objects and ideas. And nonverbal language then becomes gestures, facial expressions, body posture. All of those things symbolize objects or ideas, our values, our beliefs. Language influences our perception and our thoughts. Um, and language then becomes part of the construct that we have in being able to understand one another within a culture, understand what happens in other cultures. Language becomes a very important part of that. Okay, great. So for this week, that's all I wanted to cover for this lecture. There are some readings for you to do, some other components in the learning module. If you have questions after you're done with the learning modules, please feel free to post them in Ask Dr. X, or you can email me. And for this week, only 2 assignments. You have your quiz and you have your backup plan.